So we're here today with another interview that we're excited about because we must have pushed this 2 or 3 times due to illness going around in the country. And we are
Don't you mean
joined.
a conversation, not an interview?
It's a conversation. And we're having a conversation today with Katie Crowell, and she's joining us. She found our podcast just by searching. And so welcome, Katie.
Hi, Katie.
Thank
Thanks for
you.
being here.
Hi, Louise. Hi, Sarah. Yeah,
Hi.
I found you just by searching.
And,
Love
and
that.
where are you joining us from?
I live in Bucks County, Pennsylvania, which is just outside of Philadelphia.
Yep. You're near New Hope.
Yes, very close.
I love that
About
town.
30 minutes away. Yeah,
It's a great town.
it's a lot of fun. Yeah.
Mhm.
I'm
Beautiful.
originally from
Well, and-
northeastern Pennsylvania, though.
Oh, okay.
So I wasn't born here, but I am from Pennsylvania.
Well, welcome. We're excited to finally speak with you. So tell us about
you.
your adoption
Yeah, tell us your journey. Like from
Okay.
the beginning and as whatever you know. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was born at the end of October, 1966, baby scoop era. And I was adopted about 6 weeks later, just before Christmas. And it's funny because it was just before my mom's birthday and just before Christmas. So, I'm sure I was thought of as quite the gift, although no one ever really put it that way. I have an older brother who is also adopted. He's about 2.5 years older than I am. And during that Christmas, I was told, he said, she can go back now. Because, new sibling, and he was
How old was he when he was adopted? Was he also an infant?
He was an infant too, yes, and adopted from the same place.
Mm.
And that's an interesting, we'll get there, but
And
so I
your
always
parents couldn't have children as many.
Yeah, it was an issue with my mom. They could not have their own children. So they were a little bit older when we were adopted, like getting into their 30s. And back then that was a little bit older than usual. And I know my mom told me at some points that people could be cruel, asking questions and when are you going to have children, things like that. So I think that was a big part of some of her issues, insecurities and things. So I always knew that I was adopted. And I think it was just part of the conversation because my brother was adopted. I don't remember ever having them sit me down and with a conversation. It was just, I just knew it. And they always said, we'll answer your questions. You can ask us anything. But I think I also felt through the years that they said that, but they were hoping we wouldn't ask too many questions.
Yeah.
I always felt fierce love for my parents. And I say fierce because I think there's an element to being an adopted parent there's a fear to it. Like, we have to do this the right way. We have to do right by this child. They were overprotective. They were strict and conservative. So, but lots of love and a good childhood. It was fun. We went on lots of fun vacations. My parents had they were from that community from northeastern Pennsylvania, so they both grew up there. They had a big support system and lots of friends. So I was adopted from this place called St. Joseph's Children's and Maternity Hospital. It's not called that anymore, but it still exists. It's called St. Joseph Center, and it was run by a group of nuns called the Immaculate Heart of Mary Sisters. So it's a Catholic associated thing. And it's ironic because I grew up basically a block from this facility. Yeah. And my aunt, my mom's sister, lived across the street from it. So it was kind of between our houses, my house and my aunt's house. And it was a big part of my upbringing because we would go to their festival every year. It was a big community event. It was like a 3-day picnic that the whole community looked forward to. I volunteered there as a young kid, like in my tweens.
Did you know that you were adopted from there?
I did.
Oh.
Yes. Yeah. And it's a place that also housed severely disabled children that couldn't be taken care of at home. So when I volunteered there, I took care of those children. And so what else?
So you were adopted. Your parents fiercely loved you. You knew you were adopted. Did you and your brother ever discuss it when you got older?
Yes.
Were you the two of you close?
My brother and I had issues growing up. We didn't get along as teenagers, and this is interesting because when I first started listening to your podcast, you were talking about the primal wound, and what struck me was the issues of personality and how some children growing up as adoptees, they have trouble in school and they act out and they're angry. They have trouble with depression and sometimes addiction. And I thought, oh my gosh, that's my brother.
Mm-hmm.
And then the next thing you talked about was the people pleaser, the chameleon, the person who's doesn't want to cause any trouble and does everything according to the rules. And I was like, oh, that's me. And I hadn't thought about those things as far as like, oh, that was about adoption. I attributed them to, oh, that's how I was raised, the time I grew up in, how my parents parented me, things like that. So it was one of those, let's peel back another layer of the onion and eye-opening for me. So my brother and I, he was kind of an angry kid. He got in trouble a lot. And so I was the good girl. And so during our teen years, we didn't get along real well. Now we do. He actually, and I remember, I think, Sarah, you had said this about your brother at one point, so he never married or had any children.
Same with
yeah. And he became kind of the fun uncle to my children. But he definitely has struggled in his life, and we've talked about finding birth parents, and he always says he doesn't want to, and he feels very loyal. It's the loyalty thing for him. So
does he know that you're doing this podcast? And
yes, yeah, he does. And my children know, and everybody's excited about it.
It's brave,
not my dad, though.
You know, not your dad. Well,
yeah,
it's hard. It's hard. The family layers of it are it's a lot to come out and talk about it.
Right. So growing up, I thought I was kind of well adjusted to being adopted. I would tell people, I thought it was kind of like a cool thing. It was sort of set me apart. And when I would watch maybe Oprah or some other talk show on TV, and adopted people would say, all of us feel like something's missing. We all feel abandoned. I would be like, why did they say that about everyone? That would bother me, because I didn't feel that, but I did feel like I didn't belong. Like I was always on the outside looking into a group, whether it was my family, a group of friends, whatever group it was. I still feel that. I still feel kind of like
Same.
Yeah, like
Same.
I'm on the outside looking in all the time.
I didn't, when you're saying that, I was thinking that's how it was for me. I didn't put myself like, I don't feel like those people at all. I don't feel abandonment, but I do feel really like I don't fit in. I don't tell anybody that. It's the weird, like I'm supposed to feel some big abandonment thing, but it's really there. It's underneath.
It just manifests itself in different ways, I think. And then, yes, I had a happy childhood, but on the flip side of that, my mom, I think, really struggled with insecurities and grief and depression about not being able to have her own children. She was the youngest of 9. And so she had 4 sisters and 4 brothers. One actually passed away when he was a toddler, but all of her sisters and sisters-in-law were able to have their own children. And she was the youngest. So she saw that growing up. Of course, she wanted to have her own children. And I think it was she just felt like, something's wrong with me and I'm not whole. There was definitely stuff for her that came out in her parenting, and then in turn made me struggle with self-esteem and I think not really knowing myself, not really trusting that inner voice, and also kind of latching on to boyfriends and not making the best of choices there. And so I got married pretty young. I was 24, and I had moved out of my house to New York City and was living in Brooklyn, and then was working at a German bank in Manhattan. And that's where I met my husband. And, we had 3 children together, and I eventually came to realize that he was a severe alcoholic. And so I think I wasn't able to recognize that and didn't know. I was also very young and didn't really realize that, because part of my growing up was we celebrate with alcohol, and this is like a huge Irish Catholic family that every event, every graduation, every wedding, of course, we all
people drink.
That
you
way.
Don't think about it. Yeah.
Yeah. So he unfortunately and tragically passed away in 2017. But
wow.
Were you still married at that time?
We were, although not living together anymore. And then, so back to the adoption.
Still must have been really, your entire adult life with somebody.
Yes. And at some point he had gotten a DUI, and it was really like a huge wake up call to me. It was like, I realized I couldn't change him. And I started to kind of build my own life with my children. And, he didn't ever get that.
He didn't get sober.
Wake up call. The one thing that reminds me of with growing up and not kind of knowing that, or being able to follow that inner voice, there was sort of a dichotomy for me where I felt insecure. I felt like I didn't belong, but there was also this inner voice that would come up that I really feel now was DNA. It was just genetically wired in there. Like, you are strong, you can achieve, you are intelligent, you can, you do make the right choices, just keep on going. And I think that's where the strength to kind of separate myself from him came from. But as you guys have said many times about having children, I was pregnant with my first child when I was 28, and I, around 7 or 8 months, thought, oh, I need to get my medical history. And so I called St. Joseph's, and a woman, told me, yes, we can find that for you. And we started talking, and she ended up saying, but sometimes these reunions don't go so well. And I was like, what? Okay. And I just went,
you weren't even in that realm. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And I thought, oh,
or like, why would you, it's almost like a discouragement to search.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so she was saying positive things too, but that's what stuck out to me. And I stopped. I said, okay, never mind. And then second pregnancy with my daughter, same feelings. Oh, I really have to get my medical history for my kids. And
was your husband like encouraging of that?
yeah, he knew all about it. Again, it was not a big deal for me to share that information.
No, I don't mean about being adopted, but was he encouraging of you finding that information?
Yeah.
Or
Yeah, he definitely was. Yes. We had moved down to the Bucks County area at that point, and I was visiting my parents. And so, I was a block from the facility where I was adopted from. And I called there and I said, gave her my information again. And the woman on the phone was very helpful and didn't say that same thing about reunions. And she said, but Katie, I have to tell you something. And I was like, what could she have to tell me? I was sort of worried she might say, oh, your birth mother's passed or something like that. And she said, I'm holding in my hand a letter from your birth mother that I just received.
that she had
So-
just received?
Yes.
Isn't that
So
crazy how those things work? Wow.
And
Yeah.
this is your second time calling.
right.
Oh, that's
Right.
interesting. Mhm.
Yeah. So I found this out later. There had been an article in the local newspaper saying that St. Joseph's was initiating searches. So my birth mother had seen this article and it sparked her to write a letter. I never saw the article. I didn't live in that area anymore. No one mentioned it to me.
So she did live in that area.
She did. Yes. She not right, like about 30 miles away. But not far at all.
Close
And
enough to have
so-
seen the article.
Yes. It was, so the areas are Scranton and Wilkes-Barre. I don't know if you've ever heard of those towns,
Yeah,
but
of course.
they're kind of twin cities almost. So the newspapers are similar, and yeah, it's a similar area. So I was like, okay, we both just did this at the same time, and this means something, but I still kind of had the walls up. I wasn't ready to plunge right in and meet and do all these things. And I think my birth mother was a little more ready to get close. And I think she was a little offended by me just wanting my medical history. But we started writing letters. And back then it was put the stamp on the letter, put it in the mailbox. And then it became email later, and we really got to know each other through these letters. And one of the things that stuck out to me was that period of time where between being born and being adopted, it was only about 6 weeks. And in one of her letters, she said to me, I've visited you every day.
Oh, during those 6 weeks.
And so she had not lived in the facility. They did house unwed mothers. And I remember as a child actually seeing groups of pregnant women walking the neighborhood and wondering like, oh, I wonder if my birth mother ever walked around this neighborhood. And she hadn't. So she didn't live there while she was pregnant. But she said she visited me every day, rocked me, held me, fed me. And for some reason, that just, I cried and cried and cried about that. Like, I didn't miss out on that nurturing.
Yeah.
I kind of thought, there were times where I thought, I probably was left alone in a crib and on a schedule, and, different shifts of nurses or nuns or whatever were taking turns, and it wasn't like that. So that
Makes
was really
me sad for her that she came and then relinquished you.
What
Yeah.
were the circumstances in which she made that decision?
Yeah. So she was a little older than you might expect. She was like 23 years old. She got pregnant with a man who she had dated for a long time, but they were kind of just really good friends. And they went to parties together and danced together and things like that. This is what I've obviously found out from her later. And she told him, when she told him she was pregnant, he didn't believe her. And he told her that she was trying to trap him into marriage.
Nice.
Mhm. And so she said, okay, forget you. And she went off, and she actually lived with a friend of hers who was a nurse during her pregnancy, because her father was a prominent lawyer in the community. And of course, there was no way they could allow her to be seen. And to
so her
let that.
parents knew, and then they sent her.
Mhm.
It's so I just reflect on this every time, like women, just even how your mom felt shame not having being able to get pregnant, and here's more shame. You go off and live,
Yeah.
and you're 23 years old, you know, you can have a baby.
Yes. She used to tell me that there was, when we got together and developed a relationship, there was so much healing for her because of the terrible shame, and just, she never got over it. She never married. She never had any other
That
children.
is such the story of
Yes.
so many birth mothers.
And I think she kind of swore off men a little bit after that experience. I think she was kind of like, I'm just gonna do my thing. She was a music teacher in public school. She was also a field hockey coach for many years and a school counselor.
Interesting that you were a teacher.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, there was a lot of parallels that we figured out as time went on. She had actually, my husband was an opera singer on the side, and she had turned down a scholarship to Juilliard for voice and was very interested in opera. And she turned it down because it's such a funny story. She loved horses, and she had her own horse farm, and she called horse shows in the area for like 40 years, something like that. So she taught, I guess, dressage, or horse jumping, and had different, I don't even know all the different kinds. I think Welsh ponies.
She sounds super interesting.
Yeah, she was lovely. She really was. And she did not overstep. She didn't try to, she kept the boundaries and let me decide. My mom and dad really didn't want any part of getting of the reunion process.
That must have made it harder.
It was very hard, because my mom even said, can you not involve your kids, her grandchildren?
I went through this.
This is just another thing to put on the adoptee, right? Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And so I honored her wishes. I met my birth mother. Eventually, the two of us just met alone. And then we would call each other and keep in touch, and send emails. And this was really cool. So I was born at the end of October, and starting the first week of October, she would send me birthday cards, like several birthday cards before my actual birthday. And I don't know, she was maybe making up for lost time, but yeah, she actually passed away in 2016 suddenly of a heart attack. Yeah, she was only 73 years old.
Did your kids ever get to meet her? Or
so
did they have a relationship?
Yeah, after my mom passed in 2009. So I think,
and your mom never came around, like just wouldn't let that happen for
and never met her. I'm assuming never met her.
No. And it wasn't something that was easy to talk about. It was always strained. I felt guilty. Of course, I felt like I was being disloyal. And like I had to honor her feelings. And going back to just my birth father for a second. So my parents were told that he tried to get custody of me, and that he, when he found out he was not allowed to do that, he joined the military.
Were
So
they
when I
told
told
this?
Yes. So I think
This
what
is
they
what
tried.
Saint Joseph told your parents
Mhm.
when
So weird.
when you got adopted? Huh.
So I think the mother was the scourge of humanity, you know, shame on you, and you're a bad girl, right?
Oh,
But the man, they kind of romanticized how that whole thing went down. When I told my birth mother that, she almost doubled over laughing. Like, that's not what happened at all. And I can't believe.
quite the opposite.
Mhm. And he was a dental student at the time of my birth, and his father had had a dental practice, and so he was all set to join his father and
Wow.
take over the practice. He became a dental surgeon. And so still doesn't know. I don't know if he knows that I exist or not, because I have
Oh.
never desired to. I mean, I've had little feelings now and then of like, oh, I know who he is. I know his name. I know what he looks like. I have 3 half sisters.
You and I are in the same boat. I have 2 half sisters, but same. I know who he is, the whole thing.
Well, he knows who you
Yes.
are though now, Louise.
He knows now, but
I
now he
mean, you
doesn't.
have
Now he
reached out. And he
blows me
knew
off.
about you back.
Does he
yeah.
really?
Yeah, no,
So
I'm not.
I always felt the whole search thing for me was always kind of like, oh, do I want to open this Pandora's box? What is this going to bring into my life? And I did have a lot of compassion for my birth mother growing up. And I do think that came from my parents. I felt like, well, what if she married and had kids and never told anyone? And who knows what you're going to find, right? And the fact that we reached out at the same time kind of made it okay. But with my birth father's family and what he said to her, I've seen pictures of my half sisters on Facebook. I just don't. I've come close to messaging them, and then I go, no, stop. I'm not. I don't know if I'll ever be ready to do that. Plus, my father is still alive. He's 91, and he's the quintessential dad. And
I was going to ask you how he felt about your relationship with your biological mom. And
he didn't know, did he?
My father did know.
Oh, your father.
And
your father is 91. Sorry, I thought you meant your birth father.
No, I think he's around 84 or something at this point.
Was he the same as was he the same as your mom about the whole thing?
He was. He didn't make any stipulations about grandchildren, but he didn't really want that. I had their blessing to, pursue the relationship, but not to, they didn't want to be involved with it. So, yeah.
And he still doesn't know, really.
He doesn't really.
Yeah.
I mean, he knows that she passed. I did tell him that. And it was really because I wanted her obituary from the newspaper, that, like, where his sister lives is where that newspaper is, and she could cut it out from the paper there. So I told him that she had passed, but we never talk about it other than that. We never talk about it.
My dad never doesn't have any curiosity about my none. Maybe less to do with my birth family than just not necessarily super curious in life. But did you ever, I'll probably cut that out. Did you end up like letting your walls down with your birth mother?
I did. I definitely did. And the nice thing was it went slowly and sort of carefully with the letters. It gave us time to process it all. We weren't just jumping on the phone or jumping to meet each other. And a lot of that was her. I feel like her maturity and her emotional growth was very developed, and I'm sure it came from being a teacher and having all those kids around her whole life. She always said, like, it's up to you how fast or how slow we go. And
Oh, that sounds so healthy. Like,
That's so the opposite.
like she didn't let
Yes.
her wound define her life.
Right. And she didn't bring her baggage to our relationship.
Yeah.
Which was great,
really,
because
really great.
yeah, I have this whole, and of course this is back before well, these are emails, but I have this whole, these are our emails. And yeah, and I have a whole box of things that, like, her cards that she sent me. And I ended up speaking actually at her memorial. Yeah, and this part is interesting too. After she had me, she and her mom took me to St. Joseph's, and she ended up living with a good friend of hers who was pregnant at the time. Her friend and her husband. And I don't actually know why that happened. I mean, maybe she just didn't want to go home and she felt uncomfortable. A lot of questions I never asked her, because we ended up just kind of being friends and having a easy relationship. And
she
I don't know,
passed
it's like,
early. You didn't think
yes,
that was it.
yes.
Yeah.
And her mother had lived to be 95 or 96. So I thought we had all this time.
Mhm.
Yeah. And I think I just felt like there was lots of time to get to all those questions.
Yeah, I had
Yeah.
similar and all my emails went away with my Verizon .net email when I'm like, I wish I had the forethought.
I had to ask her for some of ours, because the same thing happened to me and I wanted them. And she sent me a whole envelope full of emails that I had lost. Yeah. There was something I was going to tell you about. I forget
did your
what it
children, so Sarah asked, but I'm not clear on it. Do your children ever get to know her a little bit?
Yeah. So after my mom passed, I brought my oldest and my youngest to meet her. My middle daughter had something going on, and we went to see her. So they did meet her in person, but it was just one time. Yeah.
How did they feel about it? Were they like,
it
wow,
was
that's
yeah, I mean, they always knew, again, they knew I was adopted, and she was lots of fun with them. She was kind of known as like silly and a prankster even. Like, her family that I know now always said, like, she would play jokes on people, and she was really funny.
She must have been a great teacher.
I bet she was. Yeah. I know what I was telling you about when she went to live with her friend and the friend's husband who was having a baby. So that baby became like almost like her niece. They called her, my birth mother's name was Jane. They called her Aunt Jane. So this baby grew up with Aunt Jane, and they were super close, and she taught her all about horses. And then this girl had a baby, and that baby became like her grandchild.
So she had a
Wow.
little bit of a nurturing. She did
Yeah.
get to experience a little bit.
Yeah. And her brother, so my birth mother's brother, my uncle, had 2 sons, and they have families now, and the children are all under, I think, 13 maybe. And we keep in touch on Facebook and through texting, and
Like, you see your first cousins.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yes. So on that side, on my birth mother's side, like I said, she didn't have any other children, so I only have cousins on that side. But
and
they're lovely and totally accept me. And go ahead.
I have one more question. So have you done the whole ancestry on your father's side to kind of talk to anybody, cousins, or not your father, not your half sisters, but just anybody else? Or how's
I
that?
did 23andMe because
Mhm.
my daughter had done it, and and some of the things that came up for her, I was like, ooh, does that come from me or your dad? So I did that to find out what was from me and what was from him. And there wasn't really anyone on there. Except
But
that there was
his
one.
name, so it's
I
easy to
do.
kind of
Right.
find out. And
I just
you
was wondering,
Facebook
because if you're
stalked.
on Ancestry, then like they see you, it's a
Right.
thing. You're like sitting there in their family tree like I
Yep.
am, and this like just sitting
Yeah.
there. And it's
I
interesting if
do
anyone's
have
like,
an
who the heck is that? Mhm.
Sorry. I do have an Ancestry kit sitting right over there.
Yeah.
That I haven't done yet. It's supposed to be a Christmas present, and I'll do it. I'll do it. And we'll see what happens. I don't know if they're on there or not. But the birth father thing about him not knowing that I exist. My birth mother had written her own obituary, and they found it in her safe after she passed, and of course published it. And what it said was survived by, and she had her brother's name, and then she put my name in there. Just there's this name, that no one knew, right? So at the memorial, people were commenting on it to the family members, like, who's this person? And they were telling them. And so I wonder, because he does live in that area, I wonder if he saw it and if he knows, or if he, so he could know I exist. It's possible.
I found out some things recently. So my birth father was told, but then I thought he knew for a long time. He was only told the one time, and sort of like, I don't know if that's my child or not type of thing. So when I did reconnect with him, he was shocked, like, oh, I didn't know what happened. And I was like, yes, you did, but he really didn't, I don't think, now that I've delved a little further. So you never know. I mean, time softens people.
Yes, I agree.
Don't you think, Sarah? Yeah.
100%. And the way, I would hate to be defined by something I said or did when I was 24, 23 years old. Like, I mean,
Me
I'd be
too.
canceled. I would have been canceled 100 times over for things I did or said in my, so that isn't just all a person is. So,
Yeah,
of course.
I would say be open to the idea, maybe.
Yeah, I think I don't do it because I'm such a daddy's girl. I love my father so much, and he still takes care of me. He's still 100% independent. And all I've ever felt from him is support and love. And
that's a fortunate thing that many of us lacked.
I just feel like I don't have that pull. I don't have that need. And maybe when he passes, I will. I don't know.
I understand.
Yeah.
And it takes time. Like I don't have a lot of feelings towards my biological father for the same reason, because I had such a strong father, but I'd like to know him. But I do have an interest in my siblings. And so just, if would they have an interest in me? And so, there's other people. So just take it slow, and that's how I feel too. I'll know when I want to do it. And
right. Yeah. I think it's important, since I grew up sort of not trusting that inner voice, to just to trust it and not force it. The times where I almost sent the message, I was like, no, when in doubt, don't.
Yes.
I don't think I was ready.
Sage advice.
For many reasons.
Yes.
Yes.
Beyond,
finally listening
beyond adoption.
to it. Right.
Well, this has been really interesting. I mean,
I love hearing journeys and different, and like just the difference in how your brothers and your experience completely different, so my brother and I had similar, we both kind of acted out and had issues, and but we also had other family extenuating circumstances that could have had to do with that as well. So it is just, I love hearing every adoptee story and how similar and different they are, you know?
I know, me too. That's why I sought you out to hear more of them. And I hope it helps people, because all of the ones I've listened to, some things resonated with me in every single one.
Yeah.
You know, there's just always something there that helps me process more and heal more, even though I thought I was done. I wasn't done.
We have this Sarah and I have this every interview, because then we think about it the whole week, like, oh, I'll go into another thought process on it. Because of your interview, we'll do the same thing. You know,
It's a lifelong journey, isn't it?
It absolutely is. It really is. And like I said, I kind of thought I was done until I started hearing those stories and thought, oh, there's something else here I need to explore or figure out. Yeah. So maybe the next step is birth father's family. Who knows?
Well, keep us up to date.
Reach out to us and keep us posted.
I feel like we're friends now after all our back
I
and
know.
forth. And I have the books that I'm going to pass on to Sarah after I read. We have so much reading now. I'm like,
sometimes it can be a little intense. Like,
yeah, that's what she said about the primal
wound.
You
need a break, right? You need a break from it sometimes. I understand that. I got really hooked on memoirs. I think I read about 9 or 10 memoirs since the summer. And now I'm just kind of like, okay, I need to read something.
And then you're like, I'm reading one of the primal wound, and it's like, I'm reading not light.
I decided to take a break for a minute from anything except for our chapter reviews. But now I'm like in a fiction. I'm I'm reading that one of the top 10 New York Times books. So
it's diving into good fiction for us.
Yes.
You know what else I wanted to tell you guys, if you don't mind? You know how you always talk about when you see your child for the first time, or when you see pictures of your birth family. When I saw the pictures, let's start there, I was like, I don't see myself. I didn't really see myself in them, but I feel like my birth mother is in me in different ways. And it wasn't the pictures that did it for me. It was more of like connecting with my, like she was German and Scottish. And I always felt this. I majored in German in college. Yeah. And I always just really felt this strong connection to things that are Scottish over Irish, because my dad is Scottish and my mom's Irish. And I always just resonated or was drawn more to the Scottish. So just things like that. And then with my children, my son looks just like me. And now that he's older, he looks a little more like his dad. But I just felt like I wanted to do everything I possibly could to make sure I did the right thing, you know, and I didn't want to hand my baggage over. I wanted to make sure that they could feel that inner voice and listen to it and give them that start in life. I know you two always talk about your children, like that connection with them, and that it's amazing how, and of course everyone feels strongly about their own children, but having that biological connection is incredible.
When it becomes your first, when it's the first you know, when you grow up with no genetic mirroring and you know, always kind of wondering, then when that first human is born that is of you, I mean, it is, there is a special intensity to that. I think that only people that didn't have biology around them may experience. I don't know, but I sense that.
No, I believe it too. I do too. There's something missing. There is something missing when you don't have that mirroring. It's not, I think that's where the feeling of not belonging comes from, and the feeling of not knowing yourself. I remember feeling like, I don't know what I like. And then I would latch on to what other people liked. Oh, I like this because my friend likes that.
Now that you're saying that, yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
I remember hiding behind a curtain, now that you're saying that, and watching my family. There's this big curtain in our living room. I can still picture it was like a green velvet, you know, at the times, very heavy. And I would hide and stand really still and watch them. Like,
oh my god,
they were aliens almost, you know, because they were so similar. My brother and my parents are so similar because he's not adopted.
So you were mesmerized by that similarity.
I would just watch them. I just remember hiding and watching. I was a big hider. Then that comes to the private detective stuff Sarah and I would get into, but it's like a hider and a watcher. I would hide and watch.
Still not too late for that. Okay.
Yeah,
that's our next business.
I remember being super jealous of my cousins because they had this long, silky black hair. And I grew up as a ginger, was a redhead, and it was curly. And I just remember like, oh, I wish my hair was straight and black like theirs. And they all looked alike. They all looked the same.
In a big family.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, Katie,
thank
this
you
conversation
so much for,
it's been amazing.
Thank you.
Having a conversation. Yes.
Thank
really
you so much.
Enjoyed meeting you and hearing your story. And I feel like it's like one of the better, happier, more well-adjusted stories out there. And it's nice to hear that.
Oh, good. Nice. I hope that doesn't make it boring.
Not at all. No.
No, it's a tribute to your birth mother, honestly.
Absolutely.
That she was so mature. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
That she didn't let her pain and, rule that relationship.
It lets you heal,
Yeah, she said so much about how our relationship helped heal her, though.
I'm sure. I can imagine.
She said that between my birthday and through Christmas, she said at one point, I just used to get through those months, and now I'm enjoying them. And
Aww.
Yeah. So I provided that healing too, which is great.
Yeah. It brought tears to my eyes.
I know.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, and
thank you.
Keep us posted on any decisions, or if you want to just brainstorm, run it by, if you need someone to talk to about that kind of thing, we're here for you.
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay.
Thanks, Katie.
Talk soon. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.